So what we've got going on here today is memory storage and retrieval. This should be APDC Psych Unit 4, Lecture 3, Psych L Unit 3, Lecture 3. This is going to be on long-term memory. We've talked about an introduction to memory. We have talked about short-term memory and sensory memory and all that fun stuff. We said your brain's like a computer. It has kind of nothing in it. You got to fill it up with material. And so you have to program it, which is the encoding part. It has to hold on to it, which is the storage part. And then you have to be able to go back and get what you're holding on to. We talked about sensory memory, which is 2 billion bits of things happening every second. We talked about short-term memory, which is 7 to 9 items, should keep for about 30 seconds. And we've also are now starting to talk about long-term memory, if I am not mistaken. We talked earlier about different types of long-term memory. I think we mentioned the hippocampus and whatnot that went along with that. And so when we're putting these memories into long-term memory, there's a couple of different ways we do it. There's declarative memories and there's non-declarative memories, implicit and explicit memories. Non-declarative memories are automatic processing, post-traumatic stress disorder. I don't intentionally put that away. It just sort of happens. So implicit non-declarative memories are memories that occur without any conscious attempt to create it. It can involve space, time, frequency, moods, all this stuff that go on with it. A lot of times when we forget to encode something, most of the times when I leave my keys someplace, I'm not going, okay, there's my keys. They are right there. And I'm going to remember tomorrow that that's where they are. We just sort of put them in the same place every day. Have a regular spot. So that way I don't have to remember the difference between putting my keys away Tuesday versus when I put them away Thursday. A lot of times we can know the lyrics to a song without ever possibly wanting to know the lyrics to that song because it comes in again and again and again. So there's no rehearsal, there's no consciousness to this memory. It's just stuff that gets in that little wormhole and sticks with us. So again, non-declarative memories are memories that take place without conditionally trying to. This could include dispositions, moods that we have that get established. You meet a person named Dave and you're like, ooh, I knew a Dave. And just the name Dave puts me in a bad mood. So I'm already creating memories of you in a bad mood. Conditioning when you were in a car and you got in an accident. The next time you get in the car, you have this feeling of nervousness because non-declaratively you're remembering that past accident. The idea of priming, where we're looking for a certain something. If you have racist feelings, whatever else the case may be, that makes you look for particular things when we're creating memories or going back to memories. Again, if you're someone who's an incredible fan of President Trump, you are primed to sort of encode and memorize the things that he does well, versus the things he doesn't do as well, just sort of bounce off your head. And if you're someone who's against President Trump, it's the opposite for you. You can only remember the bad things that he does, and the good things he does, you never quite encode those things in. Motor memory is another type of procedural memory where when we're shooting a basketball, we're not going dribble, dribble, dribble. We're just sort of doing it and repeating it again and again and again and again, so that the idea is the recollection of that won't take as long. Again, when your coach says, don't think about it, just do it. These are those procedural memories. We talked before about it being in the cerebellum, back of the brain, automatic, do it again and again and again. And again, when it comes to these procedural memories, these muscle memories, when you ride a bike, you just sort of, once you learn to do it, you don't think about every pedal that you're making, every little steer, every balance, and all these other things. You just sort of do it. You first learn to play a guitar, and you got to sit there and look where all your fingers are. But then after a while, you just play it. You just play. It's more out of feel and everything else. Again, when your coach tells you don't think about it, just do it. Moods can come with this as well. The fact that you walk in to take a test and you have anxiety, you're not necessarily thinking episodically about last tests you have taken. It's just the idea of taking a test gives you anxiety. So again, we can become conditioned for it. My wife walks into the room, my heart's just going to start to beat. I don't necessarily remember anything specific about her. It's just that there's going to be a little bit more excitement When I see her, happiness, flustering, blushing, all these things that come along. And again, if somebody reminds you of someone from your past that you don't necessarily like, it's very possible that it could put you in a mood. Again, we've talked about this before. I forget which we're on, with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where, when somebody calls you something, you don't necessarily remember being called that before, but it just, boy, unconsciously it reminds you of that particular time. So we associate things without consciously doing this. These are automatic processing. This is non-declarative memories. Emotions can have a huge impact on how we put memories away. We talk in class about trying to remember the first memory that you ever had, the first earliest episodic memory you ever had. And usually when I ask this, people talk about, I was at a party, I was in school, I fell and I got hurt, I broke my arm, I fell off whatever, I went to the hospital, and my parents yelled at me. There's a lot of emotion that's usually fought with that first particular episodic memory that we have. Our episodic memories where you're at a point where you are now in life, it's hard for you to remember episodes that happened to you prior to the age of 4 or 5. Now, again, a 4-year-old can remember what happened 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, whatever, but then they don't go back. A 4-year-old doesn't go back and go, oh, yes, when I was 3. And they don't sort of go back to those memories. They just sort of show up and then fade and are replaced by others. But when we start to become 6, 7, 8, and we get more of a sense of ourself and our place of where we are in this world, that's when we start to remember things. And a lot of times, again, it's something scary, it was something harmful, whatever. And then by the time you're 4 or 5, your brain is going, oh, I need to remember that. Because our amygdala is now a little bit more active, that sort of fear barometer that we have. So again, most of our earliest vivid memories usually have to do with stress. And it's ironic because people thought that stress would hurt your memory. Since you're so stressed and worried about danger, whatever, that would actually hurt your memory. But study after study shows that in some situations, stress actually increases your memory, because since you were in such a stressful, i.e. dangerous position, you don't want to be put in that again. So again, some of this is conscious and some of it is subconscious, again, like PTSD. Being overstressed, again, can have a corrosive impact on memories. Depression, anxiety. A lot of times when we're going through that, we're not encoding the memories, we're putting them away as well, or sometimes we can't go back to where we put them away at. Now, when it comes to episodic memories, these declarative memories, there's certain memories that we have that are called flashbulb memories. And the reason they're called flashbulb memories is when you take a picture and you take it with a flash, the flash is going to give it brighter, more vibrant colors and more details and everything else. So when we have a flashbulb memory, it is a memory with a lot of emotion involved in it, a very important moment, a lot of nervousness, whatever. It could be first day of school, car accident, your first kiss, prom night, a proposal, all these different locked in your mind things. Sometimes the memory can be collective. September 11th, for a lot of people, can remember sort of exactly where they were when the second plane hit and all these other things, because it just sort of gets burned into your mind. So flashbulb memories tend to be very, very vivid memories. We can sort of clearly see things with what's going on there. But the trick with flashbulb memories is because they're so vivid, because they're so vibrant, and because we talk about them all the time. A lot of people will recall September 11th every year on September 11th. So they keep going back to that memory again and again. And we've talked about this. Each time you go back to a memory, you get your dirty little fingers all over it. And when you get your dirty little fingers all over it, you change the memory. It becomes a little bit tainted. So what they've discovered is that when it comes to the vividness of memories, my little mousey here isn't working, but when it comes to the vividness of memory, if you take a look at the bottom, if you take, there we go. So if you look at the vividness of a memory, if you look at a flashbulb memories tend to be very, very vivid for a long time afterwards. Okay, but as opposed to an everyday memory. but the accuracy of a flashbulb memory, just like a regular memory, tends to decrease over the years. Because again, each time I go back to it, I change it a little bit. I'm sure if your parents ever told you the story of how they met or something happened in school, or your grandparents tell those stories, that each time they tell the story, it's a little bit different because those changes that naturally happen to it. We talked about this when we talked about neurons. We talked about this idea of long-term potential. Long-term potential is when you're creating memories, the actual chemical changes that happen within your memory as your synapse goes across that again and again and again and again and again, it becomes really used to it. It becomes a very easy thing to do. The more that I walk, the more times I make this connection about walking, the more dependent that connection is. The more times I go across the grassy field, it's an easier road. So again, when I first do something, my reaction is kind of here, but as I do it again and again and again, I'm going to have a more powerful sort of reaction. So long-term potential when it comes to memory is the chemical changes that happen each time you go through the neuron, each time you cross the synapse, and each time it becomes more and more efficient. Now, when you stop going to that memory, you stop walking, you stop using Italian, you stop whatever, the grass starts to grow on it a little bit more. So it becomes a little bit harder to do. And again, that's why coaches will have you drill, do layups again and again and again. So when you're in the game, you do a layup, you don't even have to think about it. Sometimes it'll disrupt old memories, but it also can wipe out experiences if we never encoded it properly. A player that's knocked out in a game may not remember being knocked out because that 20, 30 seconds that's in his short-term memory, he gets knocked out and that never gets put into long-term memory. Alcohol can have a similar effect by depressing parts of our memory or whatnot, or placing a memory where we can't find it later. LTP when it comes to Alzheimer's disease. A lot of people like to go, well, Alzheimer's disease, you lose your memories. They're still in your head. The memories are still there. You just sort of don't know where they are. You can't find them. The bridge is broken. The ability to get across that synapse is a little bit less efficient. Sleep deprivation. When you have a lack of sleep, your ability to encode is so much worse than when you're awake and alert. So when you try to study at 4 or 5 in the morning, you're never really putting that stuff away. So that's why sometimes it's better to just stop studying early, get to sleep, let your body process it, let your brain process it, and start fresh the next day. There's a lot to that. Some other things on LTP right there with sleep deprivation. So again, when we talk about memories, what we have is we've got 2 billion bits of information happening to us, comes into the sensory memory. And the sensory memory, if it never sort of came in, it goes away. But what we decide to pay attention to gets encoded in short-term memory. And now I'm paying attention to it. I'm repeating that phone number. What's the capital of Brazil again? I'm just trying to make every effort to remember it. So there's this rehearsal going on, and then I take it, throw it through the hippocampus, and code it into long-term memory. And I do that by practicing AP questions, reviewing with friends, going over our story before we lie to our parents. Not that you would ever do that. So that all goes into there. Then once it goes into long-term memory, I got to go get it, retrieve it, put it back into short-term memory. So then I can put it back again. Each time I do that, my memory becomes a little bit worse. All right. So when it comes to putting the memories away, memories don't do us any good unless I can go get it, unless I can go find it. You program a song on your iPod, I don't know if anybody has an iPod anymore, but your iPhone, your tablet, your computer, you program a song, but you can't find the song does you no good. Same thing with a memory. We get a memory, we put it away. If I can't go find it, it does me no good. A couple of different ways that we go and we get memories that are placed into our long-term memory. One is recall. And recall is the ability to go all the way through your memory and try to find where you put whatever it was. This is why students do not like fill-in-the-blank tests, because with a fill-in-the-blank test, you have to sort of go through all your memories. The younger you are, the better your recall is. You being 15, 16, 17, 18 years of age, your recall is going to be better because when you sift through your memories, you only got about 10, 12 years to go through. Me being 52 years of age, I've got 40 plus years of memories that I got to sift through. So recall is a lot harder for me. as opposed to recognition. So again, recall would be, I ask you out a piece of paper, write down the name of everybody you went to kindergarten with. And for a lot of us, we maybe get 2, 3, 4 names. But then if I gave you a bunch of pictures of kids, if I gave you a bunch of pictures of kids and I said, hey, of all those pictures of all those kids, can you name the ones that you went to kindergarten with? Or if I made it sort of a multiple choice sort of a thing, and I said, here's a bunch of here's 100 names, pick the 20 that you went to kindergarten with, that becomes a little bit easier to do. That's recognition. So again, our recall rapidly declines in the first 20 minutes. That's why it's very important when you're in class, you take notes, you write things down and all those other things, because that's going to remind you. It's going to make it easier to go to that thing, because then it's going to come down to recognition. Recognition is why you like a multiple choice test, because now instead of having to sit through all my memories, I just have to look at these 5 particular things. Recognition is very fast. Recognition takes 10 to 15 seconds. You know, if I give you a multiple choice test and it takes you more than a minute to answer a question, you don't really know the answer to that question. You're trying to go, well, it's not that, and it could be that. And you're sort of piecing it together. Recognition is also very susceptible to suggestion, where, you know, one answer, you got 2 answers that look pretty good, and now you're trying to use logic on which one's better. The idea that if I'm taking a multiple choice test and I look at my friend's test, shouldn't do that, and I put down B and they got C and I didn't take the test and I'm not very confident, then I'm going to conform to what they put. Unless I'm confident, unless I really studied for the test, then I'm not going to conform to it. But little things like, you know, having too many A's, that's 3 falses in a row, something's got to be true, thinking everything's going to even out. All of this can get in the way of recognition. This is also why the idea of when you go back and you look at your test, and some people are afraid to change their answer because they go, oh, we remember every time we changed our answer and we got it wrong. We don't recall the times where we changed our answer and we got it right, because that just seemed to make sense. But when you had it and then you lost it, it tends to be a more vivid memory. And as a result of that, we tend to remember those events. Okay, now when it comes to relearning is, I'm gonna pause this real quick. Okay, so when it comes to relearning, you know, the first time we learn something, we got to make all those neural connections and everything else. Then we don't use it for a while, and when we don't use it for a while, then we have to, the grass grows back over that little trail. It's not going to take me as long to relearn. If I haven't, you know, if I was a guitar player and I hadn't picked up a guitar in 10 years, I'm not going to be as good as I was 10 years ago, but I'm not going to have to start from scratch learning the guitar. So we'll learn quicker than when we originally learned something, which is why it's very important as you're studying for this class, any class, whatnot, you don't wait until the last moment to study things. You sort of pick it up as it's going along. Take the notes, quiz yourself, whatever. It's going to be easier to pick up when you're relearning it. So again, when it comes to this idea of relearning, Ebenegus tends to be the guy that goes with memory more than anybody else. He proved this to be true because he would give people sort of nonsense words into their working memory that we talked about before, counting from 100 backwards. But what he also discovered in these memory tests were the more that you practice something on day 1, the less time it would take to relearn it on day 2. I learned other things like the next in line effect. When people go around a circle with names, your poorest memories are the person right in front of you, because you're still thinking about all the people that were way before them. Information presented right before we go to sleep, rarely remembered, because we don't have a chance to put that information away. And also any idea of osmosis, which is listening to something while you're asleep is going to help you remember it, is wrong. Now, listening to something while you sleep and then that's something going into your dreams, very possible. But there's no guarantee you remember that dream. So other stuff there on Ebenegus if you want to take a look at it. We were talking before about priming. Priming is sort of a memoryless memory. It's what we're looking out for. You know, when you do a Google search, you put in a word, or you want a YouTube video, you put in a word, and that primes YouTube or Google to come up with stuff that's close to what you're looking for. I'm a single father. I was a single father when my daughter was 2.5 years of age. So when I see a guy on a Saturday with a couple of kids in elementary school, I'm primed to see that and think that that is a dad who just has custody on the weekend. So I'm primed to see that. Racism, we're primed to see, you know, if we have racist beliefs, we're primed to see people reaffirm those racist beliefs because we know the beliefs are irrational. So I'm looking for things to sort of keep my mind in it. If somebody tells you there's an Amber Alert and a kid's been abducted, suddenly you're looking at all these parents with kids. Is that really your kid? And we're primed to find those particular things. There was a study where they had people go to two different seminars. One seminar was go here and listen about how to save your money for the future and 401ks and investment and whatnot. Other group went to a seminar that was about being very sort of charitable, help thy neighbor and things like that. Then they all left their particular seminars, and then there were homeless people who walked up to them and asked them for any spare change that they had. And what they discovered was the people who went to the seminar about being a more charitable person, since that's what was in their mind, they were primed to give more money to these people, as opposed to people who were saying about a 401k and every dollar I got to keep hold of. So again, all these things can be priming. If you're seeing or hearing the word rabbit, we sort of think of this right here. But then if you're thinking of rabbits and I say hair, you're more likely to think of a rabbit than a hair on your head because now you're primed and thinking of rabbits. And again, this is also something that President Trump's really, really good at, is priming you, sowing seeds of doubt and things like that. And he gets people to start the term fake news. This is a Google trend for fake news. You go back to 2008, 2004, 2011. The term fake news really wasn't around until after the 2016 election and President Trump gets elected. And then the news starts to be critical of him. And the stories he didn't like, he would call fake stories, and this idea of fake news. And then all it took, if you were a supporter of President Trump, all it took was 2 or 3 bad stories that were later proven fake. You think all of it's fake. I can't trust any of it because now you're primed to believe that the news is fake. And at the same time, if you're somebody who is who's against President Trump, so you're primed to think that everything that he says is a lie, but sometimes he's very much telling the truth and what's going on. But you're so primed to believe that he's not telling the truth is you can't necessarily accept his words or his guidance or anything else like that because we become primed with our biases, which gets in the way of better free thought. The context has a lot to do with your memory. For those of you who are learning this at home, and it's better for you to be tested at home than to be tested at school. And for those of you guys that are learning this in school, you're better to be tested in school than sitting at home and taking the test. If I asked you guys that were sitting in the classroom to suddenly pick up your things and go down to the commons to take the test, it'd be a little bit harder for you because that's not where you learn the material. It's the reason why when we walk through our old elementary school, suddenly the memories of that come back, or your old hometown, or whatever. There was a study where they gave people, they were trying to get people to recall certain vocabulary words. One group of people was taught on land, and then they were tested on land. Another group of people they put in scuba equipment, and they were tested underwater. They learned underwater, and they were tested underwater. Then they went the opposite. One group of people learned on land, then they got on the scuba equipment, took their test underwater. One group of people learned underwater, then they took off their scuba equipment, and they were tested on land. And notice when the context changes, the memories weren't as clear in that. So again, sometimes when we're stressed, we're in the context of being stressed. The memories that we create aren't going to show up until we're stressed again. So the context of what something is, that can have a lot to do with it. And again, back to stress, the state of mind that we're in. If I'm very happy, I'm more likely to remember happy things. If I'm very upset, I'm more upset things. Somebody who has anxiety or depression, they're going to form memories while they're depressed, but then when they're not feeling depressed, those memories are going to be harder to get to. Somebody who's drunk and then the next day, I have no idea what I did last night, until they get drunk and they're like, hey, remember last weekend? And they suddenly can remember it all because they're back in the same state of mind. these memories go back to that particular place. You could use this to your advantage, putting your mind in a certain state. Some studies would suggest that if you had a certain flavor of gum or candy, that if you sat in class, let's say you sat in your psychology class every day and chewed Wrigley spearmint gum, and then every time you studied for the class, you chewed Wrigley spearmint gum. Then when you sat and you took the test, if you chewed Wrigley spearmint gum, that would put you back into that same state, which would make it easier for you to find those memories that you had chewing that gum before. So that familiarity with it. And very similar to what we talked about before as well, mood congruent memory. When we're in a happy mood, we remember happy things. When we're in a bad mood, we remember bad things. So again, memory, emotion, mood, all of this can serve as retrieval cues. You ever notice that when you do something bad, your parents remember every bad thing you've ever done since the beginning of time. Yet when you do something very charitable for your parents, very good for your parents, or you give them a wonderful present, whatever the case may be, then they remember all the amazing things that you've done. So again, there's a way that you can sort of manipulate your parents a little bit with this, because you can sort of, buy him a piece of cake, come home with a piece of cake. Oh, wow, you're wonderful. Look at you. You're such a sweet child. Buy him your piece of cake. You do such sweet things. So again, the mood, the state of mind, congruent, all these things can impact our memory. Finally, I think this is the last slide, serial position effect. We remember the beginning of the story. We remember the end of the story. It's the stuff in the middle we have problems with. If you give somebody a list of things to pick up at the grocery store, they'll remember what was at the beginning of the list, what was at the end of the list. It's the stuff in the middle of the list they've got no clue about. Because in the beginning of the list, they were primed for it. They were primed and they were paying attention. Okay, list, give it to me. All right, this, and this, and then whatever was at the end of the list, and pick up asparagus and asparagus. Okay, that was the last thing. That was the recent thing. So the prime is the first things that I'm hearing. The recent were the last things I was hearing, but the stuff in the middle becomes a little bit harder. The alphabet starts with ABC. It ends with XYZ. We get somewhat lost in the middle if we're not singing the song or whatever went along with it. It's when somebody, again, is singing, speaking of singing along with songs, is doing song lyrics, and then they can remember the beginning of the lyric, they can remember the end of the lyric, but it's the stuff in the middle. They're like, last Friday night, it's the stuff in the middle. That we have just a little bit of a harder time recalling. And again, with music, we're primed by the songs, we're primed by the music, and the end words are also easier because it rhymes with whatever the other one was. I mean, there's these times subconsciously that we can even, almost tell you what words coming up in a song, even if we've never heard the song before, because we're primed to think that way. So that is lecture 3.